So, Dr. Smith, welcome.
Thank you.
Wonderful to sit down and chat with you this afternoon. Tell me about your journey to becoming the first Black woman to lead the LGBT Center.
Yeah, it has been definitely an interesting road to move into this position. I largely have been influenced in a number of ways in terms of personally and professionally. Personally, the most significant person in my life, the biggest part of my village was my paternal grandmother, a Black woman from the South, very much committed to faith, right? And from Birmingham,
Ah,
and very much tied into faith and service. And so I learned from her through her modeling early on that she always kept an open seat, an empty plate, and a pot on the stove at her table. And anyone who needed services or food or nourishment could sit down at her table. Didn't matter who you were. So I watched that throughout my life and learned from her what it meant to give back, right? We did not come from a lot of means early on, but really understanding that everyone was welcome at her table. She believed that it was her job to do that. And as a faith woman, right? And so I learned that early on and really was encouraged by her throughout my life. I'm biracial and, born at a time where that wasn't necessarily acceptable, right? My family struggled a lot early on with that. But I think that I learned through her that anything was possible for me. And so I went to college, right? I went to grad school. I got my doctorate and really entered the world of service because that was my role. That was my calling, according to my grandmother, and my job to sort of give back as I have made it across those lines. And my desire was to serve underserved communities, knowing that I was impacted in lots of different ways just based on the way that I present intersectionally. And so really wanting to make sure that those that needed access to services got them. That included people who are LGBT, right? I'm a member of that community. And so my road back to the center, I first came there in the 90s when I moved to New York for a job. I was doing HIV/AIDS work. Went to the center because I didn't really know anybody and wanted to be in community and found that community. And I really feel like I have had a full circle moment.
wow.
Really wanting to make sure that my community and all the intersecting ways we identify receive access to the support and safety and comfort and feel seen and heard. I've heard so many times for people who come to the center that coming to the center and walking through the doors is like getting a hug. I feel that every day, and I want to be able to work with the team to model that inside and outside of center doors, and to not be the last as the first person of color, but to make sure that we let people know that anything is possible for them too. And to make sure that they're supported along the way. So I feel very privileged to be in this role as the first, but I definitively won't be the last.
Amen to that. We have a lot in common with that.
Nice. Speaking of things in common, so I know you're also the first Black woman to lead the New York City Council. Can you tell me a little bit about your journey and sort of who supported you along the way? Mentors, systems, family members, community members, who helped you sort of make history?
Sure. I came from two union parents, raised in Hollis, Queens. And my parents raised my sister and I very, very humbly. And I always say, and this isn't any offense to anybody that loves animals, I don't know if it's popular to say anymore, but we were raised like veal. So, and back in the day, and that expression means to just be kind of really guarded and protected, sometimes overprotected. So I went to elementary school, Catholic elementary school. From there, went to Bayside High School, was a cheerleader and very, very active in extracurricular fun stuff, and helped to co-organize the first gospel choir that Bayside High School had ever seen. Belonged to the concert choir, concert chorus, and musical, fun activities. From Bayside, I went to York College, CUNY, for the first year and a half of my collegiate life. And at York, I had a very, very great psychology professor. Her name was Dr. Jacqueline Ray. And she was a great model, statuesque Black woman. She demanded attention when she entered a room, but she was just the softest, loveliest. But the way that she carried herself, I wanted to emulate that. The way that she taught us, she made it easy to learn. Psychology, I happen to love psychology, but she made me want to teach psychology on the collegiate level. After a year and a half at York, I transferred to Spelman College in Atlanta, Georgia, and I got my degree in psychology from Spelman, and I minored in early childhood education, and always had my face in the place when it came to learning and educating, teaching small children, teaching adults. My first foray into employment, I will say, was not teaching. It was not teaching psychology on the collegiate level the way that I planned. I planned, haha, and God laughs, right? So I became a flight attendant. Imagine that. So I had a great time, about 5 years or so, being a flight attendant, developed speaking skills as a flight attendant. Who thinks about things like that? It's a very, very physical occupation, right? Moving things, having to know where emergency equipment is at all times. They are not glorified waitresses in the sky and waiters in the sky at all. That's the last thing on their minds. So after that, after being a flight attendant, I went into corporate America, into the telecommunications field. And in that field, I climbed up the ladder, so to speak, and became an executive trainer. And I ended up training a whole lot of folks that didn't look like you and me, and a whole lot of folks that probably are making a whole lot of money that you and I will never see in a lifetime. But I was the one to train them and give them skills in their professions to carry them forward. Most often, the only Black woman or woman of color in the room, sitting at that room, in those rooms. Once I left corporate America, I took a little break. I'd been in corporate America for about 20 years. I figured I was ready to retire. Sat out for a few years and just tried to figure it out. What do I want to be when I grow up? What? So I decided that I wanted to jump both feet into my community, something that I hadn't even thought of before. There was this great big world of community service just waiting for me. So as long as I'd been serving other people and other people had been using my talent, I didn't really feel that I was giving back enough.
Right.
So I got involved in my local community board, and I became the education chair. The head of the community board says, look, I need you to exercise some of your gifts. And I got out there and I became the voice, really, for our children in my districts in Southeast Queens. And I would represent in different meetings where the DOE would be present. And that was under the Bloomberg administration back then. And if you remember, our schools were being shuttered. Our children were being called failures. And they were being thrown out of spaces that literally had raised them from very, very young ages. So I became an advocate in those spaces for our children. I was then, a few years later, elected to become the president or the chair of that same community board. And people saw something in me that I didn't necessarily see in myself. And people were encouraging me to run for elective office. And I said that was something that I would never, ever, ever do. I hate politics and I hate politicians. That's just not me. It's not a part of my spirit. It's not a part of anything that I'm about. I will not be one of those people. As life would have it, there became an open seat. And I just felt a little spiritual push saying, go ahead and just go for it. And I went for it, and I became the first woman council member to represent District 28 in Queens.
Amazing.
So I've been a council member for just about 8 years. I was elected in 2022 to represent my peers as the speaker, the first Black speaker of the City Council. And I still don't consider myself a politician. I consider myself a servant, a willing, favored, blessed public servant who loves her job. And the first time I walked into city council chambers, my spirit said, "Welcome home." And I knew that it was where I belonged. So here I am. Here we are.
It's amazing. I think we both have a lot in common. We both have found our homes. I remember walking into the center on day one and having a young person come to me and say, "I just wanted to see you," and hugged me. And I felt like almost like a weight shift, because as a first Black person, you feel a little bit heavy by
Yes.
carrying that load.
Yes.
But I knew, and my grandmother sits above me. And so I knew I was in the right place. So it sounds like we both have had those sort of spiritual
That's right.
nudges along the way.
That's right. You
Yeah.
said your grandmother's, my parents, my mother sits on this shoulder and my father sits on this shoulder.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I lost them 9 months apart a couple years ago. So we do have a lot
We
in common.
do. Yep, we do. More than you know, probably. But we're getting to know each other a little bit
Yes,
today.
this is good. So I'm going to ask you, Dr. Smith, from your perspective as CEO, what's the long-term impact of the center's work for LGBTQIA plus New Yorkers, and how would you describe your vision for the future of this beloved institution that you now lead?
Yeah, I mean, I really feel privileged to be at the center at this moment in its history, right? The center's been around for more than 40 years, really grew out of the HIV/AIDS movement, trying to create safe space for members of the community who were impacted by AIDS, who didn't really have a space to go to. And we're looking to be in community with others who were also part of the community and impacted. Who really wanted to be able to organize and advocate for each other, but also find chosen family, right? A lot of people had been, either kicked out of their homes or just didn't have somewhere to go based on the sort of intersecting ways they identified and really struggling with the crisis that was happening at that time. Since that time, the center's really grown and developed and evolved to add on services that help to meet the needs of the community that we're serving. And so really recognizing that those needs have changed over time. We've continued to change, right? I'm excited about the fact that the center is a truly safe space, and that people, depending on the way they identify, come from spaces that are not safe just to be at the center and get on a train and may not be safe on that train based on the way that they identify. And do that anyways because the center offers a home for them and a safe space. And so I feel that when I walk through the door. I know that our community members feel it. I can see it on their faces when they come. They can access services. They can access culture opportunities to just be in places that are affirming, which is not common everywhere, right? And so vision wise, when I think of the center moving forward, of course, I want to continue the services we're providing: mental health services, substance use services, HIV/AIDS services, really economic empowerment, crime victim services as well. I think about additional opportunities for us, right? So places that we haven't really dove deep into, enhancing our crime victims' work, understanding the impact that that is having on our community, making sure that we help. I say it's like our little tentacles, right? We have this affirming home where everybody feels safe. I want that to be outside of the center walls, right? So that we're helping other organizations who are serving our community to become more affirming and to understand the impact of that. Feeling safe is something that many people take for granted and not our community, right? And so having the ability to work with other providers, like shelter providers, to say, hey, our people are accessing shelter. They may not feel safe in your shelter. How can we help you do this, right? Making sure that we are helping to serve new arrivals who are coming to the center every day, and really excited about some of the work that you all are doing there and wanting to support that. So I think there's tons of opportunities, right? Housing, economic empowerment, lots of sort of areas for us to explore, and we're going to do that in a strategic plan. The ultimate goal is to continue to make sure that our space is welcoming
Yeah.
and safe
Yeah.
for every community, and the intersecting ways we identify, including people who look like me and different from me, right? And that they have a place to call home, right? Not everybody has that.
That's right.
And it means something. And it means something when you know you've had it and when you haven't had it. And I bring that lens to my work, understanding what it's meant not to have access, what it's meant to be in spaces where my voice could not be heard based on the way I identify. And then to walk into a space where that actually happens every day, and to know that our community deserves that everywhere we go.
That's right.
And so I'm excited about that and where we're going to go as an organization. I work with some amazing people who are just so committed to making sure that our community feels seen, heard, loved, and supported. And those are people who identify as part of the community and allies, right? And so we're a mixed bag at the center, which is a good thing because we serve a mixed bag, right?
That's right. That's right.
But I'm really proud of the team and proud of the work that we're doing. And I think the possibilities are just endless for us in creating a community that is more welcoming and safe in a very challenging time.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a very welcoming space.
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yeah.
And your team is amazing.
Yeah.
And the work is so important. It's so, so critical. And I tell you, when I walked in there, I felt like I was made of gold or something.
I will pass that on. I'm sure they will be. I'm sure they will be excited about that. So, community centers like ours have seen firsthand the effects of broken immigration system. In fact, our internal data shows that a 40% increase in demand for our services for newly arriving LGBT New Yorkers. At your state and city address this year, you announced the council's new arrival strategy team, which is exciting, to provide immediate and long-term support for people seeking asylum in New York City. Why is that important for you and the council? And how do you see partners like the center playing a role in that effort?
Yeah, thank you for that. The new arrivals team is something that we saw a great need for. There was a step missing. We wanted to help the administration. The administration has done phenomenal work, by the way, when it comes to our migrant crisis, something that New York has never seen before. We've not been prepared for it. Who could be prepared for it? But we just wanted to give a way to assist, to fill in some of the gaps that we saw. So we enlisted the help of some veteran folks that have been around healthcare, that have been around city government, that have been in a migrant situation, people that speak other languages, people that feel the experiences of those coming off of those buses and airplanes, to tell us how to fill those gaps, what we can better do to serve this population that is coming literally onto foreign soil without anything. So this is what this group is for. They are working together to put together a report that we hope to see over the next few weeks to tell us exactly that, how we can do a better job in assisting to help our newest New Yorkers, as we call them, find hope, find health, and find a space to live right here in our great city. We've got so much to offer. But again, we were not prepared for this crisis, and we are still, as my dad used to say, getting ourselves together.
Right.
So the council thought that we could help, to do just that, get ourselves together with partnerships like your organization and the resources that you bring to the table. We hope that we can help particularly our youth that are coming into New York, sad, without family, lost. And we know that your organization is one of the best to bring them to help them find a better life, to help them realize that they have people that care about them, legitimately care about them, and that they're going to be okay. Which is our common goal.
Absolutely.
We want everybody to be okay.
We're so proud to be part of the conversation and to make sure that LGBT identified individuals are part of that conversation. I'm so glad that you all invited us to participate. we are seeing many, many people coming through our doors, right? Really looking for safety and security in places that are new to them, but may not have existed where they were coming from, right? So it's new to step into a place that you're not familiar with, right? And so I'm proud of the center's work here and happy to be part of the team.
We're so happy you're here.
Thank you.
So happy you're here. The council values our cultural institutions very much, which is why we fought so hard to restore funding for culturals in the city budget. In what ways does the center's work interact with arts and culture?
Yeah, arts and culture is huge at the center, as you probably have seen.
Yes.
Anybody who's walked through the
Yes.
center doors, you see arts and culture on the walls, right? We literally have paintings that are part of the movement, right? That really convey history.
In the rooms, even.
In the rooms, right?
Yes.
In the hallways. We have the Keith Haring bathroom. We have other art that is in sort of hidden hallways that you wouldn't necessarily see unless you've walked through them. We also have the LGBT archives at the center, and are thankful to the council for supporting that. That would not have been able to continue that work without that council support, right? And so we really appreciate that support. That is the oldest archives, LGBT history archives around. It's been around since the 90s, and we have a huge collection. And it really serves as sort of a connector between generations. I often think, when I think about my grandmother and great grandparents, it's like you lose those connections and those stories. And so having a space that can collect that information and make sure that there is programming available to our young people so that they can carry that message forward when we're no longer here is amazing. And that would not have happened without council support. So we're very thankful for that. We do a lot of work with marginalized communities in terms of businesses that don't typically get to be at the front of the table, or even at the table, I should say. And so we do a lot of sort of cultural events throughout the year to highlight and elevate businesses from different sort of demographics. We do a Black market, holiday market, where we bring in Black-owned businesses so that they can sell their wares, elevate their businesses, and make money, right? We do a lot of programming around, we did some programming around AAPI groups, bringing them in to have time. We've actually done an iftar, the only LGBT iftar that exists in the city that we're aware of, where we bring together members of the Muslim community and we celebrate, right? That happens once a year. We're looking for additional opportunities to continue to expand that, to make sure that members of marginalized communities, underserved communities, have an opportunity to sort of talk about the work they're doing, to educate the community around the work they're doing, and to have spotlights at the center, right? We have arts, different spotlights for different artists who come in, and we sort of position their art throughout the center, and people come through and see it. The Keith Haring Lab gets thousands of people from across the world, right, who come in to see that space. And so it's been part of our history. It will continue to be part of our history. We're looking to expand our programming in that area to make sure that we continue to share information with people and educate people around LGBT history and LGBT artists as we sort of move forward. So lots of exciting work. Yeah.
So important.
Yeah.
As you're speaking, I'm remembering being there and just visualizing the different spaces that I was in when I visited. It's just amazing to look at.
Yeah.
So impressive. And it's just so important that the artistic voices continue to be heard and seen and appreciated.
Absolutely, right? And you're doing that with the understanding that you're not charging people for that opportunity, right? On the walls, and really looking to be mindful of the costs of doing that type of work moving forward, so that we have those resources. So the council's support has been instrumental for us.
Terrific.
Okay. Oh, this is exciting for me to share with you. And you probably already know this, but because I think we may have talked about it. So this year, the center is launching its first of its kind Article 31 mental health clinic, focused on meeting the specific mental health needs of LGBTQ plus people. The council's mental health roadmap lays out policies and investments to address city's mental health crisis. So far, the mental health roadmap has focused on community-based solutions, veterans, and now youth. Why is the roadmap a priority for the council, and how can nonprofits like ours help?
Oh my goodness. Oh, this area right here The mental health crisis facing our city has been a long time in the works.
Yeah.
Mental health has been something that we have not wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
As a society, we've pushed it behind, we've ignored it, we've acted like it doesn't exist. We've put, auntie and uncle, they're just, in the room upstairs away. We don't really talk about them. So now that the rubber has met the road, because we have ignored the situation for far too long, we are now at total crisis. Rikers Island has become the #1 mental health facility in the city of New York for folks with mental health issues. That should never
Yeah.
be the case. So in the council, we've prioritized mental health. We have worked out and legislated, as you've said, a mental health roadmap
Yeah.
where we have specifically eked out community-based solutions, organizations, places where people can go and feel like they're at home,
Yeah.
where they don't have to feel, in a quote unquote sterile environment that is unusual to them, exacerbating conditions, which is something that we don't want to do. We want people to feel that this is welcoming, it's warm, it's a place where people are concerned,
Yeah.
about your mental health, about making sure that you're well and everything's good in your life. So now we focused on veterans, we focused on others, we're focusing on our youth.
Yeah.
I think about our youth, everything that they have gone through in everyday life,
Yeah.
in their home lives.
Yeah.
But now the pandemic,
Yes.
right? And coming out of the pandemic, the things that they've seen, witnessed, lived, lost, we have to do something about that. So we are concerned in the council. We are being very, very deliberate about the work that we do and how we legislate and wanting our children to be healthy. I was just reading something before we sat down in my district. One of my staff members actually had a meeting with NAMI and one of the high schools in my district. So imagine that we can partner with high schools
Yeah.
and great organizations like NAMI and others to actually come into the high schools, talk to the students about their mental health, speak to the students about themselves, make them feel their worth
Yep.
and that they're worthy of the attention. So this is what it's all about, working with partners like you and letting our youth know that there is some place to come
Yep.
where you can feel good about yourself again and be in the midst of people that really, really are concerned about you, that care about you and want you to be well.
Yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing. I know that the center is one of those spaces, right? It's just one of those spaces. So having the ability to engage this Article 31 is major, and to participate in the conversations with you all. We know that youth coming to our center need support, mental health support. We understand the implications of the pandemic and how intersecting identities can complicate
Yes.
mental health issues, right? And whether people were isolated in ways from community that the center used to offer, right? When they couldn't come to the center during the pandemic. So being able to serve youth, 13 and older,
That's right.
long-term mental health care at the center through this clinic is going to be major, as well as their parents, right? Being able to help parents support their kids, especially when they identify in ways that parents may not necessarily be used to.
That's right.
So really glad that we're part of the partnership because the needs in our community are substantial as well. Yeah.
Yeah, very much. Dr. Smith, we're observing National Coming Out Day. Exciting. Can you talk about the importance of visible LGBTQIA plus identities in our modern political discourse?
Yeah, I think we both have a sense of how important it is to have visibility and representation, that it matters, right, along our sort of paths and our journeys. And so I think in particular, making sure that our community members, given the times, the challenging times that we're in, where LGBT identified people are being targeted, right, continue to be targeted, and some of the rhetoric that we're hearing around the country.
Yes.
elevate the importance of having opportunities to really celebrate, for people to feel like they can see others who have stood up and proudly stated who they are, right? To walk into yourself and to feel safe and supported, by places like the center, to make sure that they have examples of that along the way. Over 500 anti-LGBT bills in across the country, right? Really largely targeting trans-identified individuals. And so while New York is safe, comparatively speaking, to other places, like we're a sanctuary city, we're not immune to the
Right.
messaging. And so our young people, in particular people who may not have come out, who have been afraid to come out, hearing all those things makes that even harder, right? For you to feel safe, for their parents to feel concerned about their child's safety if they come out, right? But to have people stand up and represent, people like our staff members and people in the community, people in media, to be able to claim their identity and to feel, supported in doing that and safe in doing that is really important. So those coming out day is extremely important, right? It gives people something to look at and say, oh, look who stood up and said and claimed their space, and to feel like, it's okay to live your truth, right? I try to do that every day. Our staff does that every day. It is sometimes challenging, right, based on the environments you're in. But the places like the center really reinforce that, right? We're here to say to people, you are safe.
Yes.
You are welcomed. You're accepted. And so coming out day is all about that, right? And important.
It is
Yeah.
so important,
Yeah.
so important. And I look around, it's just so critical what you just said, legislation. I look around and I see so-called leaders that should be leading our country, leading our policies, and they're quite embarrassing. From a legislator's standpoint, it's quite embarrassing to the majority of us that take a look at some of this stuff and go, you got to be kidding me. You have to be kidding me. So it's embarrassing, it's disappointing, but to know that there are true champions like yourself and your colleagues, and you've got the support of those of us on the council and many others that far outweigh,
Yeah.
anybody that lives their lives through hate speech.
Yeah.
I'm just so glad that we've got a unifying community that, is accepting, loving, and participatory in the well-being of all of us.
Yep.
Because we all deserve it.
Absolutely. Every single human being
That's right.
deserves to be accepted, supported, loved, and safe.
That's right. That's right. So, what are some of the ways that we can continue working together to better serve our LGBTQIA plus communities? How can we help? What can we do better, bigger? How can we help?
Yeah, well, we've been working together
Yeah.
for a while, and so I think some of the things that we've talked around being involved in conversations around immigration, around the sort of mental health work that we've been doing, support for the mental health clinic is vital to the center, right? We know that these services are going to be far needed much more than we have resources for. And so having resources for that, really working to support the Marcia and Sylvia plan, I think is something that the center and the council can work on. We want to make sure that we're part of those conversations and have been part of those conversations. I also think when I think about the sort of myriad of issues that are confronting our community, and my background in the anti-violence arena, I really think there is some significant work to be done around working to ensure that we're able to enhance our crime victims work, right? So many LGBTQ plus people experience violence, whether that be intimate partner violence or hate violence or sexual violence. And so I think the center does this work already, but we know there's the need for more. We know there's a need for partnerships with providers who are doing that work to make sure that those services are done in a culturally competent way. I think the center and the council can work to make sure that organizations are really thinking about competency, to make sure that when our people walk through the doors, they don't turn around and walk out because they don't feel seen and heard, or they feel seen in a way that is not supportive. And so really wanting to partner with the council and others to do that. The center will be exploring the possibility of opening its own housing program at some point as part of our strategic plan. but knowing that there's so many people to be served, crime victims work is major. So many instances, growing reports. I just read a report from the Controller's Office around hate violence, and the number of increases between 2018 and now is like 40%. And so really running to work with council around strengthening hate violence related legislation and programming, and even thinking about perhaps accountability programming related to hate violence, depending on the level of the crime. I think there's opportunities there to make our community safe,
Yes.
right? And I think continuing those partnerships with you all is important for us to do.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll do our part.
Appreciate you, of course. Yeah. Can you tell me why you think Black leadership is so important on a local, state, and federal levels of government?
Oh, sure. Black leadership. I always say, what took us so long to get here, right? I mean, in 2022, I was elected by my peers to be the first Black speaker of the New York City Council. And I'm asked that question a lot. How does it feel to be the first Black speaker of the New York City Council? And my response is always, it's so bittersweet. You know, I'm so honored to be in this seat,
Yeah.
to work with my great colleagues, to lead them, to lead this body. But what took us so long? Why are we still looking at firsts as Black people? So it's that important for us to see ourselves in each other, for us to see ourselves ascending in roles that we've never been in before, for us to see ourselves reaching plateaus that have never been reached before, to see ourselves, quite frankly, going to higher heights never believed in before. Hello, Presidency of the United States. Just saying. But it's so important for us to see ourselves and to support each other. I look at you and I'm looking in a mirror, and it's a great feeling for me to know that you're there in your position. It gives me great hope. And you mentioned that you're the first, but you won't be the last. I feel the same way in this role. I'm the first, but I won't be the last. So it's knowing that we have blazed those trails for folks that look like us and people that said it would never happen or could never be done. Look at us now. It's so important that we continue to open these doors, to blaze all of the trails that we can, to reach these milestones, to break through these barriers. All the cliches that we can conjure up, they're all applicable
Yep.
to where we are. And it's important. It's important that we move on, that we inspire others to do not just what we've done, but to go beyond.
Yeah. Share the learnings.
That's right.
And take those learnings and pass them on for
That's
sure
right.
to people around us. Yeah. Appreciate you. Congratulations too. It's exciting. It has been exciting for me to see you in that role and
Thank you.
to see what's possible.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.